The almost century-long period stretching from the rescission of KDFY's gate-building contract in 55 PCU to the settlement of Valeria Sibus in 160 PCU is known to historians as the Lennox Abeyance, so named for Prime Minister Emery Lennox, who was the original force behind the withdrawal of the gate contract, and whose subsequent long and austere tenure in office was defined by a complete deprioritization of driftgate construction, expansion of the gate network, and exploration in general, which continued through many of their successors until the events of the late 150s PCU. It was this decade that saw the meteoric rise of Andre Jabari to assembly-wide fame, an incredibly wealthy and successful CEO who had made his fortune in freight and anti-piracy insurance, and managed to achieve a good deal of public influence, even in spite of the Assembly's long-standing anti-corporate attitudes and extreme oversight, which had stood since the Abyssinian Commerce War, and doubly so since the KDFY disaster. Jabari took a great personal interest in astronomy, and was excited by the probing of the Valadar exoplanetary system by astronomers in 152 PCU. Despite the system's promising readings for potential resource yield, all propositions for exploration or settlement had been met with disinterest by the Centran Parliament, including those pushed by Jabari. Having always been frustrated by the Lennoxism of the last century, Jabari devoted his considerable resources to a vast marketing and funding campaign for something unprecedented in Assembly history, a completely privately run expedition to a newly discovered solar system. It was of course necessary for Jabari to receive permission for this endeavour from the Centran Parliament, which due to his considerable influence he eventually received, though this endorsement was made by a parliament with very little faith in his plans. It was stipulated that all expenses for the expedition must be covered by Jabari himself, and that in addition he must pay all overheads on the running of any resulting settlement without state assistance. Most Assembly MPs considered it extremely unlikely that this project would succeed or even fully get started before falling apart. Jabari's marketing campaign targeted those who were also tired of the Assembly's lack of expansionism, both those who felt it was indicative of stagnancy and those who felt it was a betrayal of ancient Centran exploratory traditions. He also found good fortune pitching the project to prospectors and mining conglomerates, who were excited at the potential of first pickings on an untapped star system that may have significant resources. Eventually, on the 152nd of Equinox 160 PCU, through a driftgate privately commissioned and built by the new and untested Grafton Gateworks Corporation, Jabari and his private flotilla, now watched by millions as the biggest news story in the cluster, took flight toward the distant Valadar system. Valadar itself is a K9 main sequence star, around which orbit two planets, Valeria, a medium-sized gas giant within Valadar's habitable zone, and Valadar 2. Between the two planets lays the asteroid belt named by Jabari's crew as the Beacons, which attracted them to the system in the first place. Once arrived, the fleet began prospecting for in-situ materials for construction of a return gate. The belt, however, proved surprisingly richer than the original figures had led them to believe, greatly facilitating the next step of Jabari's colonization plan. Remote spectroscopy had shown that while within the habitable zone, the small moon of Valeria, named Valeria Sebus, possessed only a thin nitrogen atmosphere, prompting Jabari's expedition to concoct an unprecedented colonization plan. During the first year after arriving in-system, his fleet would divert cometary bodies from the system's outskirts directly into Sebus, while mining ships extracted titanium dioxide from asteroids in the Beacons. Once seeded with water from the comets, the titanium dioxide was dispersed into its atmosphere, acting as a photocatalyst and decomposing the water into hydroxyls, which quickly decompose into O2 retained in the atmosphere and hydrogen escaping off into space. Over the course of the following decade, oxygen levels in the atmosphere would continue to steadily increase up to a thin but breathable concentration. By 162 PCU, the Valeria star system, now named for the gas giant around which most of its settlement and commerce took place, had become incredibly prosperous, far and away beyond anything the Centran Parliament had expected. Essentially a self-sufficient freehold despite being nominally Assembly territory, the system was consistently making enormous profits through asteroid mining and trade, and Jabari's pride and joy, the terraformed moon of Valeria Sebus, was now increasingly covered by a sprawling high-tech cityscape, which more and more was finding itself described as a rival to Centrum itself, a comparison the leaders of the Centrum Assembly would not brook for long. Thank you for watching. You can get The Sojourn through various distributors, all of which are accessible through www.thesojournaudiodrama.com. You can also get the series through Patreon, where you'll be able to access various bonus features, including our visual dictionary, Guinevere cross-sections, and anthology shorts. Remember to join us on Discord and get regular updates on all upcoming Sojourn releases. All the related links can be found below this video. Fair winds.